But do not be fooled by mysterious text messages that you might be getting meant to intimidate you into not voting. And to join us with more about that right now, we're proud to be joined by Matthew Lehner, who is the chair of the Wisconsin College Democrats. Matthew, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Pat. So great to be on. Thanks for having me.
Nice to have you here. And obviously, we want to talk to you anyway about the importance of college students voting all around the state. But of course, first we have to take care of the monkey business that's going on here. And these are texts that, in some ways are not necessarily, threatening. But we saw the same thing with billboards that were put up in predominantly, Milwaukee areas with communities of color that said, voter fraud is a crime and meant to intimidate. Now, college students, some of them, are getting texts that say, warning, violating Wisconsin statute 12.13 or 6.18 may result in fines up to $10,000 or 3.5 years in prison. Don't vote in a state where you're not eligible. And Matthew, that all might even be factually true, but of course it's not there as a public service announcement, is it?
No, it is certainly not. I just want to be clear right off the bat. If you are a college student in the state of Wisconsin, you are a Wisconsin resident and are able to vote on campus. It is legally allowed. Do not listen to these text messages. You get these text messages reported to the Wisconsin Elections Commission because it's voter intimidation.
That's all it is just, again, like the billboards themselves, is
Exactly.
anything that makes somebody think twice, like, oh, voting might not be worth the hassle. But the like you said, the rule is very clear. In Wisconsin, if you have lived in a particular election district or a ward, a precinct, whatever terminology you use, if you've lived in there for 28 consecutive days without the intention of leaving anytime soon, you can vote. You can vote in that district. The important point legally is then, now don't also vote back home, whether
Correct.
it's in Wisconsin or in another state. But as a college student, essentially, you have a little bit more power than you know. You can vote back home or you can vote where you're going to college and figure out you can kind of say, where does my vote make the most difference? Because again, legally, you're a voter here, you're a resident here, you're a voter here.
Exactly. Yeah, and I of course make the case in my role as chair of Wisconsin College Democrats when I'm tabling on campuses, as well as encouraging my board as well to make sure that we encourage students to vote in Wisconsin, because this is a swing state. And of course, on my end, I want Kamala Harris and Tim Walz to be the next president and vice president of the United States. And your vote has a lot more impact here than it does in Minnesota or anywhere else. And frankly, college students live most of their time here, spend most of their time here. If you work in the state of Wisconsin, you pay taxes in the state of Wisconsin, sales tax, obviously. And so it's important to have, your voice heard here because you live most of the time here. And so, it's just natural to vote here in the state of Wisconsin versus anywhere else.
And I'm glad to hear you use that phrase. You are a taxpayer here. Now,
Yes.
Again, maybe you're not paying, I was going to say Donald Trump level, but his taxes are a whole different matter. You're not paying Eric Hovde level taxes, but you're paying taxes here. You're
Right.
working here. And frankly, if you're also voting here, you may feel a bit more invested in the outcome and want to put down roots here. And that's something that's very important to folks in Wisconsin, is that college students, wherever they came from originally, when they're done with college, feel like this is a place they can call home where they can work, pay taxes, and vote.
Yes, exactly. And I am originally from Waukesha County, Sussex, to be specific. And, I've lived there 18 years of my life before coming up to school, came up to Eau Claire, fell in love with the area in the Chippewa Valley. And so I'd like to make roots here too. And so voting is a natural way of doing that, making roots, establishing residency, having stake in the community. I've run for local office twice up in Eau Claire as well. So again, it's just about using your power, using your voice. And, it's a great way to establish a residency and get involved in the community as well.
Yeah, I mean, you and I both know a thing about coming to UW Eau Claire and falling in love with the Chippewa Valley. It just has a way of doing that. Now, I know, obviously, from past experience and from recent evidence that voting on campus, like voting in a lot of places, may involve some very long lines. Early voting is certainly an option, but there is also the option next week that I think you want to pass on to college students wherever they are and voters wherever they are. You have the option to be patient while we're in that line and
Yes.
not get discouraged. Don't go home.
Right. And I just want to say, like, you have options too, right? Pat, you've said at the top of the hour of your show today, and throughout the show, I'm sure that early voting is happening now. You can cast your ballot early. If you're a Wisconsin college student, that applies to you too. Go to our Instagram, College Democrats of Wisconsin. We have a post up there that for every campus of what your early voting location is. And so you can make your voice heard that way as well. In most cases, all you need is your student ID. And then the polling place, if you live on campus, the polling place has the on-campus residency book there. So you can vote early at your early voting location, get it done with, and skip those lines. But of course, if you are welcome to decide to vote on an election day, there may be some lines, but I will assure you that our College Dems chapters will be handing out snacks and food and everything like that in line. And it's important just to stay in line because this election is so critical and so much is on the line. So any time that you spend waiting in line is worth it so that we get the right people in office.
Can we talk about the importance statewide of college students, especially in the areas where they can truly make a difference? And I often think of the 3rd Congressional District about that. Absolutely. With the schools that are either in the 3rd Congressional District or near enough that there are students who live within the borders of the 3rd Congressional District. And when you look at how close these races are, I mean, college students alone could be a difference maker next week, Tuesday, in that key swing district.
You're absolutely right. And it is not hyperbole when we say that Wisconsin college students will be the margin of victory in the state. We have seen in past elections, whether it is 2022 and 2023, that we move the needle for Democrats up and down the ballot. And why is that? Because Democrats are speaking to young people. The Democratic agenda is the agenda that young people get behind and believe in, whether it's gun rights, gun control, whether it is climate justice, racial justice, voting rights. All of those important issues are the issues that young people care about. And so if young people, get out in record numbers as we did in 2022 and 2023, we will be the difference in this election, especially since it is so close. And when people say it will come down to 2 votes per ward, that is no joke. It may come down to that in this state, as well as Michigan and Pennsylvania. And so if you're a college student, just know that you have the impact to make the decision on who will get elected to the White House this November. In addition, as you mentioned, the 3rd congressional race, Derek Van Orden is not an ally of young people. And in fact, yelling at Senate pages, had an ethics complaint filed against him for doing just that. And so, there are 6 college campuses across the 3rd congressional district as well. And those college campuses, I certainly believe too, given that the race between Rebecca Cook and Derek Van Orden is so close, according to the polls, that we will be the tipping point in that seat as well. So you have a lot of power to make a difference. If you believe that this country should go forward in a new direction with Kamala Harris, Rebecca Cook, Tammy Baldwin as well, then make sure to use your power in the state because it couldn't be more critical.
We're talking to Matthew Lehner. He's chair of the Wisconsin College Democrats, and we're talking about college students and the power they have for voting coming up next week or early voting. And yours is a generation, as every next generation, every new generation of voters is more savvy on the technology and the media than the one before. We have talked at great length about how social media has pros and cons, the immense damage that was done in 2016 by Russian-based disinformation that found its way through Facebook. Right. When you look at the landscape of social media right now, how would you frame, both the good and the bad from it? I'm going to guess that the bad isn't so much misinformation as if you're exposed to it too much, it's so negative and you want to walk away from it. But would you put something else in its place? And what about the positives of social media for college age voters?
Yeah, well, I would certainly agree with you on that last point. My Twitter feed can get a little scary sometimes, as well as the rest of my social media feeds. But needless to say, I think social media has a tremendous positive influence on elections, in addition to getting young people out to vote. I think there's no way that we would have had the record turnout that we did on campus in the 2023 Supreme Court election without social media and groups coming in, as well as, you know, famous TikTokers that talked about elections and were getting into the hearts and minds of young people and the screens of young people, talking about the importance of electing Janet Protasewicz. If we did not have that perfect storm, I don't think you would have seen a scenario where, in fact, that Janet Protasewicz got more votes than Tony Evers did on the UW-Eau Claire campus, which for a spring election is unheard of. So social media has tremendous power. And I think you're seeing that in 2024 with, you know, several social media influencers talking about this election. You know, Wisco project as well, you know, putting, you know, millions of dollars into digital ads across the state of Wisconsin, and the Democratic Party as well, investing in digital ads specifically targeted to college students. So it has tremendous power. And of course, you know, the downside is that, you know, folks like me who are unashamed about their viewpoints, you know, get a lot of cyberbullying online, and I have thick skin, so it's no problem for me. But of course, disinformation is an extremely bad problem that we see. And I think it does affect young people because, you know, I oftentimes get that from young people that come up to table that, like, the border is the most important issue and that Kamala's not doing anything about the border. And then you have to kind of, you know, get into them and say, like, well, look, you know, when Donald Trump was, you know, president, not only did he do nothing about the border, but when he was a former president, he actually blocked a border bill that would have solved the border security issue from passing, a bipartisan border bill from passing. So, you know, obviously social media does have a lot of disinformation and that does affect young people, but it's important that we cut through it. But I think in general, social media has a tremendous impact on the way we do elections, and it gets young people out to vote, which is always so critical.
And the thing that I like most now is that we've gone from a time where I think a lot of college students weren't plugged in and maybe turned to, you know, mom and dad or somebody else and said, hey, what do you know about these candidates? To now it's the college students who can ring up, you know, their parents or a sibling or whatever and say, you know, hey, here's a little personal canvassing. Here's a little, you know, what I think, and maybe be that influencer on somebody else's vote. Matthew Lehner is chair of the College Dems of Wisconsin. Appreciate it so much, Matthew. Thank you for all you're doing. I know you got a crazy week ahead of you, so thanks for taking some time with us.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on, Pat. I appreciate it.
You bet. Have a great day.